Hello, Sandeep.
Hi, Vic.
Sandeep, did you miss the class yesterday?
Yeah, I watched in YouTube.
What was it again?
I watched it later.
Oh, you watched it.
Night.
Yep.
Yeah.
Sandeep, do you mind letting me know beforehand if you're not in the class?
Okay, sure, Vikram.
Thank you. Hi, Neha.
Hi, Vikram.
How things are going? Hello, Kirti.
Hi, Vikram.
Thanks for joining in. Okay, and where are the rest of the folks? Neha, did you take the assignment? Did you take the quiz yesterday?
Yes, Vikram, I did, Vikram. I even submitted.
Okay, Neha, quick thing. Can you do a set state inside render?
Which one, Vikram?
Can you do a set state inside a render function?
Step set inside an render function? Yes, I guess, Vikram.
No, Neha, because every time we do a set
Okay.
state, a render is triggered. Okay?
Okay. So that one I wrote wrong yesterday.
Yeah, if you're doing a set state inside a render,
Okay.
render would be triggered, and if render is triggered, since you have a set state inside the render,
Okay.
a set state happen and a render and a set state, that would be an infinite loop. Okay.
Okay, Vikram.
Can you do a set state in component will mount?
Component will mount? Maybe yes. No, I guess.
Yes, Neha. Except for render and constructor and should component update.
Okay.
Everywhere else you can do a set state. Okay.
Okay. Sure, Vikram. Thank you.
Sure thing. And the few things, probably you might have got the answers for the quiz, right? Did you?
I got Vikram. I got.
Okay, so please take a look again. And if
Okay.
you want to give out, try
Sure.
again for the quiz, you can still give it out.
Sure, Vikram. Okay.
Okay. Waiting for Venkatesh, Murali. I know Vidisha will be late for 5 minutes. And, is Divya in? Yes. Okay. Okay, looks like everybody is in. Murali is not in. And Venkatesh, are you in?
Yeah, Vikram.
Okay, awesome. Okay, guys, let's get started. So we were looking into integration of Redux yesterday. Sandeep, what were the two packages that we need in order to integrate Redux into the application? We were looking into
React and Node.
what was that?
React and Node.
React and
Node.
Node.
Is that Redux and React Redux, Vikram?
Yes, Sandeep. It was Redux and React Redux. These are two packages we need in order to integrate Redux into our application. The Redux is the state management library by itself, where the technology or the methodology is. In order to use that into a React application, we use React Redux. The same way, if we are using another different UI framework, you would use a different middleware or a different wrapper that connects both your Redux and the particular UI library you're working on. Okay, so we have successfully installed. Okay, before we get on to these packages, are you guys clear what we have about a person? Vidisha, I'm getting a little bit noise from you, and do you mind muting your mic? Okay, before we go ahead, are you clear on what we did yesterday of creating a person object and trying to change the name, age, and email of the person using different actions? Do you want me to write that function again to get a little more understanding? How many of you want to go over that function again? If you have missed yesterday's class, or did you, as I said, if you could not able to understand anything from yesterday's class, I would be happy to help you again to go over everything what we discussed yesterday. The whole point in here is to try to understand what a default state is, what are the actions are, and what does the action do to your default state. Any questions from yesterday's class? Use your panel to answer. Or use your D-lock mode. Now we were doing a plain vanilla JavaScript yesterday. It was nothing to do with React and nothing to do with Redux. It was just plain vanilla JavaScript where we had an object. We're trying to change the properties of an object using a function which takes two arguments, a type, to understand what data we are changing into an object and the actual value that we want to change to. Now, Sandeep and Venkatesh, do not have an answer to this. Do you want me to repeat that again? Okay, thank you, folks. No, I do not have that thing we did yesterday. For some, I haven't saved the URL, but let me try that thing. See in my history, still access to that URL. Okay, so here we are. From yesterday, we were looking to a very small a use case where we are trying to change a person data using a function, and we're letting a function know that you need to change this particular information from whichever value you already have to this value. Okay, so data. And this becomes actions. Okay, all the actions we do. And this becomes your default state. Okay, and this becomes your reducer. A reducer is nothing but that takes something into it and returns something else. Okay, now in my case, it's taking in the change age and the data and returning a new object. Okay, it's not trying to change the existing object, it's trying to return me a new object which has no reference to my previous object, and it's giving me out. And I use switch case in here because we have a variety of action types we're gonna do. Okay, now you have an interview question. A reducer function is to be a pure function. Now what is a pure function? Now let's okay, let me clear your panel up. And what is a pure function? You guys know what a pure function is? Use your panel. Now, okay, so let me write down two functions. Okay, I get a lot of no's in here, so you have to understand what is a pure function in order to understand what I mean by a reducer is a pure function. Do you remember I was telling you reducer should be a pure function? What I mean by that? A reducer should be a pure function. What I mean by that is reducer should not have any set state. Okay. And coming back to JavaScript, we really do not have a set state because that's something that is very much related to React. But in JavaScript, a pure function is nothing but that works only on its arguments that are passed into the function and does not mutate or change anything outside the scope of its function. Okay, let me do this. Var c is equal to 10. Okay, I'm writing a function to add two numbers. Function and add two numbers. I would get two numbers as a comma b, and what I would do is return a plus b. Okay, and this is one function adding two numbers, and let's repeat this function again, adding two numbers 2. Okay, and inside this c is equal to 20. Now tell me which one is a pure function. I have a function in here that takes two arguments according to the definition of pure function, a function that only works on the arguments that are passed into the function. It does not try to mutate or manipulate anything outside the scope of its function. So in my case, what is a pure function in here? Which one is add to the first one or the second one?
The first one.
The first one, Vidisha. How many of you think it the first one is? Use your panel, say yes if you think it's the first one. Yes. Okay. No, look, I will. I'm gonna use Udayshri. You haven't got that?
Sorry, Vikram.
Uh, Udayshri, you haven't got that. What is a pure function is? I do not see an answer from you.
I actually it's not rendering.
Oh, your voice is really breaking. You can chat if you would like to, if you cannot type in. Because I do not see an answer from your end. Did you? Oh, no, I see that. Okay, thank you. No, I'm going to use a word which is very much used when you deal with JavaScript. It's called a side effect. Okay. No, a function, a pure function, suppose should not have any side effects. Remember when you take some tablets or some homeopathy medicines, they say it does not have any side effects. What does that mean? It would only try to cure the thing that you are suffering from. Other than that, it would not affect any other bodily functionality, right? The same thing goes in here. It does not have a side effect means it would only work on the arguments that are passed into the function. It does not have a side effect like this. The side effect is it has nothing to do with C, but it's still looking and trying to change the value of C. Now, this is called a side effect. A pure function is something which does not have any side effects. Okay, and what are some of the side effects are trying to change something out of the scope of the function. Okay, making an API call. Now, making an API call is also a side effect. You know why? Because it is asynchronous. It doesn't know how long would it take. Okay, doing timeout, setting timers, I would say, inside a function. As soon as the compilation completes, it should not have anything to do with that function. Now, the API would take a little while to complete. Now, that the scope of the function would have been long given back. And the setting the timers, setting for 30 seconds or 40 seconds inside a function would execute the function, but still it would have a side effect. It would kick off another timer. So that makes that the function is somehow trying to do something outside the scope of its function. Now, we have to try to avoid it. Now, using the same concept, folks, a reducer is supposed to be a pure function, okay? This is an interview question. What is a pure function in React, and in which parts of the React, which parts of the Redux are supposed to be a pure function? Neha, what would you say?
React is a pure function is something which does not affect the code, and it is done in making APIs and setting timers.
Do you mind rephrasing that thing?
Pure function is something that does not affect any state effect. Okay. And what was the second question, Vikram?
Which parts of the React Redux are supposed to be pure functions?
That I don't know, Vikram.
Which, just give me a minute. Yes, I'm back. Neha? For some reason it was disconnected. I'm back. Am I audible to everyone?
Yes, Vikram.
Okay. Yes, thank you. So Neho, which parts of the React and Redux we use pure functions is on the render and the reduces. Okay, so the reduces and the React render are supposed to be pure function. They're supposed not to have any side effects. Okay, and in case with the reducer, reducer is supposed to be a pure function. A pure function is something that only works on the data that is passed into the function. Now, action would carry all the information about what we are getting into the function. Okay, and that would work on that particular object which is inside the function. Okay, and going forward, it would try to change the things on that particular thing. Now, you might be wondering, the person is something outside the function, and we're trying to change something that is outside the function. In a React world, what we do is we also pass the person as an argument to this guy. Okay, so that becomes argument to the function, and the function will only work on the person object and the action. It will take the piece of information from action, then update the person and give out a new object. Okay. Okay, awesome. Now going back to where we left yesterday, the React and the React, we need two things. We need React Redux and the Redux part. Okay. Okay. So, folks, the first and the foremost thing when you start integrating Redux into your application, okay, when you start really integrating Redux into your application, you have to think about the state of our application. In my e-commerce application, let's look at what was the state of our application. So initially, what is the piece of data or we have it on the UI? What are the pieces of data? Kirti, do you see any data on the UI?
No.
No, we are looking through the products data, right? The data is getting from an API call.
Yes.
Yes. So what do we have? We have the dynamic products, right? So we have a variable called dynamic products. And what else we have? We do have the data that we deals with its cart. Cart is also a piece of data that has order products in it, right? Yes, no, Divya.
Yes.
Right. So we also have something else that is keep updating. What else? What is other piece of data that's been updated? So let's take a look at the UI and see.
The search input.
I'm sorry.
I mean the search input and add to cart.
Exactly. Yes, that's another piece of data I'm looking for. Okay. So search string. Right. This is a null object in here. So the first and the foremost thing when I try to integrate Redux into an application, I have to look for the state of an entire application. Okay, I have to look for the state of the whole application in general. What is the pieces of data that keep changing on my UI? Now, in our case, we have dynamic products, cart, and the search string. Okay, you have to sit down with your team, try to understand what are the pieces of data in your application. Write down whole state. You know, whatever it is. What would be the default state? Now, the dynamic product by default would be an array, and we would make an API call, then get the data, and then update the dynamic products. Okay, and we also have a cart, which is initially a null array or an empty array, and we would update the cart every time we make an action on the UI. Okay, the search string also exactly the same thing, but it's a string type instead of an array. We have the string. Okay, this becomes the default state of our application. Okay. Okay. Now let's take a look at creating some of the reduces. Okay. The first and the foremost thing we have to do, the integration of React and Redux is divided into two parts. First, installation of Redux. Okay, configuring the Redux by itself, then working with the React code. So let's try to do the Redux first, then we'll do the React part, and then we'll jump on to the Redux. Okay. Just give me a minute while I pull up my notes. Okay. Now let's go back, and the first and the foremost thing to understand what is your default state of an application. Okay, in my case, the default state is dynamic products, start, and a search, right? Now we go back to whatever the source of the folder and would create a new folder. Okay, it's not a file anymore, it's a folder, and we call it reduces. Okay, and we hit the enter. We go into the reduces. The first thing we would do is create a file called products reducer. Okay, the product reducer.js. Okay, and inside my products reducer, what are my default state? I would create a default state, say constant default state. Okay, and my default state is the dynamic products, an empty array, and a cart, which is an empty array, and a search string, okay, which is a null string. Now, this is my default state. We were looking into the JavaScript function, right? And what do we do next? We have to create a function. Okay, this is my reducer. Okay, I'm into a folder called product reduces. I'm creating a file by the name products reducer, which is a reducer. Okay, so reducer would have a default state and a function that would change its default state. So function, I would say product reducer, or so products reducer. Okay, and this would take two pieces of data. Okay, the previous state. Now this thing a little bit different than the conventional JavaScript way of doing it. What we do is we take in the previous state and we call it as a default state. Okay, and what is the next parameter that goes into your reducer? Folks, what is the next parameter argument that goes into a reducer?
Action.
Action. Yes, action. Awesome. Now we would have an action in here, okay, and what we do is by default we would return a default state. Okay, so we need to do something inside this function. We would do a variety of switch cases in here. So we would create a switch cases, and depending on the action type we would do that, right? So action type. Awesome. Now what we do is, okay. Guys, can you give me like 10 minutes? I'm getting repeatedly a call. I need to take it.
Okay, Vikram.
Is it okay? Sure. Thank you so much. Now again, okay. So let's do something in here. Okay, so that would return. So what I would do is I would just have my previous state returned as it is. I'm not trying to mutate anything in here, but once we trigger the actions on the UI, then we would add these more details into this thing. Okay, so the next thing I have to do is anything that any JavaScript file, once I start writing it, the next and the default thing I have to do is export it. Another way to export a JavaScript file, it's called module.exports. We were looking into export default, right? So this is another way to do it. Module.exports, and we would export this product's reducers. Okay, it's reducer, not reduces, product reducer. Okay, I would give it a save. And do you guys know that whenever we're trying to import a folder, yes, Venkat.
I have a quick question.
Yes.
So, how many parts we divide into Redux? Like you said yesterday, they divide into three parts, like the store and reducer, and another one is action. Okay, the storage, which is consists of data, like dynamic product card, set string, it would be a store. Then
No.
whatever the
Store is a different thing. We'll talk about the store. Just give me a couple of minutes. We'll jump into the store. Okay.
okay.
So we have. Oh, Venkat, you still raised your hand?
No, sorry.
You're trying to put down your hand. Okay. I have a reducer. You guys know from your JavaScript classes that when you're trying to import a folder, what is the one file that would be imported? Now you have 10 files inside a folder, and I try to import the folder. What would be the JavaScript compiler would look for inside? Which file name would be by default it would look for? Now, if you are on a web, guys, what is the first file or the first, it's a file or document that is loaded on a browser?
Index.html.
Exactly, index.html. In the same sense, whenever we are trying to import a folder, the compiler would always look for a file called index. Okay, and that would be imported. Now I'll create a reducers in here. Now I can able to create any number of reducers, folks. Okay, I can create multiple hundreds of reducers. The max I have seen, working in a project, I have created close to 26, I believe. 25 on the tabs and one on the overall list. So 26 reducers I have created. You can go create any number of reducers. All the reducers put together becomes the store. Okay. Now in my case, take a look in here. I don't want to have my dynamic products cart and search string all into one single reducer. What I would do is I would just copy this file, and what I would do is rename and would say user reducer. Now, what is the difference between a user reducer and a dynamic reducer and a product reducer? Can you see? The products reducer deals with anything that is getting the data, but the user reducer deals with anything that the user makes an action. Okay, is it clear? You can divide your reducers based on your use cases, and you put together all your reducers, then that becomes one single store. Okay, you divide your state into multiple segments. Each segment is called a reducer, and all the reducers put together becomes your store. Okay, and we need some location, some place where we can merge all these reducers, right? And we call it index.js. Be very careful with this Redux thing, guys. Inside your React Redux project, you have multiple index.js. Every folder would have its own index.js. Now look at this guy. The source would have its default index.js in here. The public would have its own index.html file. Now the reducer would also have an index.js folder. Okay, so a new file, index.js. And what I do in index.js is I would try to put together all my reducers. So my reducer, the dynamic products, and the cart and the string would be merged together and becomes a single state, okay, or a single store. Now on my index.js, I need a utility or something that can combine my reducers. And Redux had nailed it. It got a very simplistic terms. You can say import combine reducers. Okay, and we are importing this package from Redux. Okay, we are only looking into Redux part. We haven't jumped on to React Redux. Be very careful. There are a lot of interview questions around this area in here. People, interviewers would ask which utility function from which package you use to combine the reducers. Okay, we use combine reducers from the Redux package, not React Redux package. I have seen interviewers asking, "Are you sure? Are you sure?" Be very clear. Combine reducers is something very. It's related to Redux. It's not related to React Redux. Okay. Combine reducers, and what I would do is I have to import all my reducers in order to combine. Right. In order to combine, I need all the reducers. Now help me to get all the reducers. How do I import all the reducers? You can see. Okay, let me pick a person. Udeshi, can you help me to import a JavaScript file into another JavaScript file?
Import?
Yes. Import, and the variable name is anything we would like to give, right? I would like to stick with the convention and say product reducer. And what is the next keyword?
From?
Yes. And where do I import from?
User reduces.
I'm looking for a product reducer, I believe. No, I'm inside index.js. I'm trying to pull everything into index.js. Can we do something like this? Can we do this?
Yes.
Okay. Now, Sandeep, can you help me to import a user reducer?
Import
Okay.
user reducer from
Okay.
dot slash
Isn't it double dot?
single.
A single dot?
Yeah.
Okay.
And
And
user reducer.
now what I'm supposed to do is combine these two things using this function. So what this function takes is, it's a function, and it takes an object, okay, an object, and this object takes a product reducer, which is products. Okay, you can name this anything you would like. I would like to name that as products, and comma, and I would say user, and that would be user reducer. Okay, so what I do is I combine both the reducers using combine reducers, and I would creating an object in here. Okay, this is an object in here. That object, inside an object, what I'm doing is I'm having a unique key, because objects are supposed to have unique keys. This key can be anything. Okay, this key can be anything. While reading back, you have to use the same key. Okay, so I use this key in here. I would assign my product reducer to this key and the user reducer to this key. Now, when I try to combine them, I have to export them as well. Okay, so what I can do is export default. Okay, I can do something like this as well. I can say where combined reducers is equal to combined reducers. Then I can export that combined reducers. Export combined reducers. And I should say it's a default, because it's the only thing I'm exporting. I'm not exporting anything other than. Okay. So this on the reducers part. But what is a reducer is? A reducer takes a piece of data and gives out a new piece of data. And we can have multiple reducers. Okay. And we combine the reducers inside index.js. Any questions until this part? I know it's getting a little tricky as we progress, but I'll try to answer or go over again if something is going away. Use your panel. Any questions on this piece of code?
So now this is a pure function we can
Reduce.
combine reduces.
Obviously, it's a pure function because we are combining pure functions, right? We're combining a pure function, and that would become pure functions as well. A combined reducer is something very internal to the Redux. Okay, what they do internally, I am not sure. Or they create observables, they create event emitters. They have a different mechanism inside inside the Redux package. All they do is facilitate a package called combined reducers, and inside the combined reducers we have to pass our reducers. Okay, and that thing would give out a combined reducers of all the reducers we passed it. And you can go this however long you would like to. Like you can go any number of reducers you like to. Okay, you're supposed to have a different key for a different reducer. Okay, is that clear, Murli?
Yeah, clear. Yeah, clear.
Okay. Guys, any more questions on this particular piece of code? No questions. Udayashree and Katie. Awesome. Okay. Now let's go forward and let's try to create a store. Now you might ask, Vikram, you just said we were creating the combined reducers and the combined reducer becomes the store. What's the point in creating another store? Okay, so guys, we are trying to combine the reducers in here, and that becomes a root reducer or something that we are inputting. But store is something that is very sensitive, like a state. Okay, and store is safely guarded. The combined reducers are not safer, or they do not trigger whenever a store doesn't do anything. We need to put this data. We have a piece of data. Now we can try to go changing this data. But the whole point of Redux is to have that in a secure place where only through actions it can be changed. Now that safe location is called a store. Okay, so we will take all this information from all the reducers and we will put them inside a store. Now that's a very simplest way of doing it. I would create another folder called store. Okay, and inside my store, what I would have is a very simple file, index.js, okay, and inside index.js, I would have a store. But remember, store is supposed to be a combination of all the reducers put into the store, right? So the first and the foremost thing I have to do is import a root reducer. Now you might have a question, what is a root reducer? A combined reducer is called a root reducer. Everything that is combined, put together. Now we are combining all the reducers, right? And I would try to import this from the reducers folder, okay? Put this guy off. From the reducers folder. Now imagine, I was telling you that whenever we're trying to import a folder, now I'm importing a folder in here. I'm not importing a particular file. There is no file by the name reduces, but I'm importing a folder in here. But when I'm importing a folder, that would index.js would be automatically exported. Okay, and inside my reducers, I have an index.js, and that would export default this combined reducers. And I would take that combined reducers, put into a root reducer. This is another interview question. What is a root reducer? A combination of all the reducers is called a root reducer. And what we do is we have to create a store, and Redux offers another utility function, very simple utility function. Guess it? What does it do? What are we trying to do in here? Neha, what are we trying to do here? Venkat?
Maybe integrating between React and Redux.
No, we're trying to create a store here. Out of all the reducers, we are creating a store, right?
Yeah.
So the utility function is create store. Okay, it's called create a store. And where do we import this from? From React Redux or Redux? Murali?
React.
Redux.
We import it from Redux. We are not into the React world as it. We do not see any reactive programming here. It's all about Redux. So we import combining the reducers, creating the store, everything that is related to Redux, not React Redux. Okay. So we have a create store in here, and we would create a store with say constant store is equal to, and we need to create a store, right? So the simplest way is create store, and we pass the root reducer into our store. Okay. Once we have imported and created our store, by default we would have to export it, right? Export default store. Now we have just created few reducers. We combined the reducers. This is how we go integrating Redux. First, try to understand the state of an application. Break down your state into different fragments. Each fragment will become a reducer. Okay, you go create your reducer with your default state or the default piece of fragment. Once you have your pieces, you put together all your pieces inside index.js under the folder called reduces. Once you have the reduces, you combine the reduces using a utility function called combine reduces. And then once we have all the combined reduces, now we have the piece of data. We need to put it in a place where it can be safely guarded. I was telling you, Redux is all about giving out a new state. It does not try to manipulate the existing state or mutate the existing state. In order to do this, we need another person or someone who can take care of our data. And that fellow is store. Okay, the store is another utility function from the Redux, not from the React Redux. And what we do is we get all the reducers in here. From the root reducers, the combined reducers all put together, and we take it in here, and we create a store by using create store utility function. And once we have the store, now this is on the Redux one. Okay, any questions on the store part, folks? Use your panel. Now things are going to be little complex as we progress. It would be better to clear off anything before we go ahead.
Vikram?
Yes.
Yeah, on the fourth line, you're making a constant store, and create store is a Redux or React function?
It's a Redux function.
Okay, so it's an inbuilt function. Okay.
So inside a Redux function, we are passing a root reducer. It's like a wrapper. It's like a gift wrap. Inside your gift wrap, you're putting your box or your value, your things, and
so basically we're just putting all the reducers because it's safer, right? The store.
Right.
That's
so if you have a wrapper, if you have an item, Vidisha, if you give it out an item, it wouldn't look like a gift. But if you wrap it inside a decorative paper or something like that, then that would become a gift. I don't know if I made any sense.
You do, Vikram. I got it.
It's like a wrapper, and once you have your things, you wrap it inside your create store, and that becomes the store. Okay, so this is on the Redux part. Use your panel if you have any questions before we progress. No, and guys, I'm telling you this, trust me, it took me a while to understand the Redux. I was from a Flux background, and we're trying to understand the Redux. Few parts did not fall in place, and it took me really longer time to understand, because those times Redux was out and there wasn't a documentation around the Redux part. It was too hard for me to understand what was the reducer, what was the create store, why are we doing this, etc. But as I started using it, now I've been close to 10 projects across almost all the projects. I would say close to 7 projects I have used Redux. This is my favorite thing, because tomorrow if there is a bug, trust me, it would take 10% of the time to resolve the bug in a Redux project than it would take on a non-Redux project. It pays off. It pays off really good after the time. The initial understanding of the Redux is little harder. But when you have your hands onto the Redux, start throwing in the debuggers, try to understand what's going on internally. But that's really interesting. You guys are glad that you have a very good documentation on the Redux. So please make use of it. There's also a lot of Udemy courses on. There are also Udemy courses from the creator of Redux. So you can imagine he is the person who can put it in the best way possible. So take a look at that course. And if you are not able to make out anything, I would get in touch with you in person. Okay, I would not make it in a class, but I would try to want to get in touch in person to make you understand Redux. Because Redux and React are the deadly combination that the IT, whoever is using UI framework or React, by default, they are using Redux. So they are so much associated. If you have a 30 minutes interview, the first 15 minutes would be on the React and the next 15 minutes would be the Redux. You can impress an interviewer by talking about Redux. He might not be impressed by talking about React because React is something that can be picked up very easily. The Redux is something that comes through an experience. Trying to understand those little pieces, the moving parts of Redux. It's little. I did understand initially, but I'm trying to explain the Redux to someone who are newer. And in my initial batches, it was very hard for me to try to understand. Then I came up with an approach, a different approach of going through visual diagrams and all. That did not really work out. Then I went to the JavaScript way of doing, and that thing was kind of showing some learning in the students. Then I picked up showing in a JavaScript way in a singles file, showing everything in a single file, and then jump on to the actual integration. I hope that helped you. If not, I still have those pictures. I have to pull it from my hard disk. I would be glad to show them to you.
Pictures of what, Vikram?
How the Redux works. The pictures doesn't give you an idea of Desha. It's kind of, I need someone who can do an animation on the pictures, but I really cannot do an animating part there. So I do have only images of how Redux works.
Okay.
But I'm trying to find someone who can help me on the animation part. But I would show you the images, but once you have this understanding of the concept, then you would understand the images. Directly, I was trying to show the images first, and that was like a lot of things that you do not understand, that would throw you in more confusion, and trying to get them out of the confusion and trying to understand that it was another challenge for me. Okay, let me clear off the panel. Any questions until this far using the basic understanding of reduces and store? So this is on the Redux part. We're going to go back onto the React world. Try to integrate the store into our React world. Use your panel to answer if you have any questions.
Can you explain it again like that?
Yes, Venkatesh.
Yeah.
Okay. Your voice is breaking.
Hello.
Yes, Venkatesh.
Yeah, can you explain it again? Reducer and store, like just the basic understanding.
Definitely. So let's go in here back into our application. Okay, so where was I? So you remember this, Venkatesh? Where we were looking at? Okay. Let me clear this part out. You remember this, Venkatesh? We were creating a default state called person.
Yeah, I remember it. Yeah.
Right? What I did was in my current application, we have a very small piece of state. So that's the reason I have put up one reducer. Then I thought I would explain two reducers. In our case, we have a very simple state in here. What if we have something like this, where person secure details. Okay, like an SSN. Okay, like a A. Now A is not something like a what else? Like a credit card number. Uh, in a real world scenario, guys, your pieces of data can be separated. Okay, you have your entire state of your application. You can separate the data depending on what data falls into different categories. In my case, on the UI, we have a generic detail about a person, like the name, age, and an email, which are very much can be open to on the UI. I have another piece of data which is very secure. Now I have separated my details into two parts. Something which is in general, which can throw out in the public internet, and the second part is something which is very secure. Now, when we try to integrate Redux into our application, what we do is we break down our state. Okay, we break down our pieces of state and try to see what each variable fall into which category. Okay, and depending on those categories, we create our reducers. So I will create a reducer for this guy, for this object in here. So the personal details becomes another reducer. So everything that I need to change on this personal details, I would change using this reducer. If I have to change anything that is related to secure details or private details, I would say anything I need to change on this guy in here, this object, I would use a different reducer. Now every reducer would maintain a state that is very specific to the particular to the that piece of state. Okay, so whichever default state we have initially can be only changed by that particular reducer. Okay, in our case, we have a product reducer, which is a dynamic product. Now, this particular reducer will only change the things inside my dynamic products. I have a user reducer. This reducer will only change something which is only inside this particular default state. Every reducer will have its own default state. When you combine all the default states, that becomes the default state of your application. Okay, by default, your application does not have an item in a cart. By default, your application does not have a search string inside the search bar, right? You have initially the dynamic products are an empty array, then you make an API call, then you get the products. Now that is something very different from what a user is making an action. The user actions are different and API actions are different, right? So we separate those details depending on user actions, depending on API actions, depending on type of data. This is not something you get immediately when you deal with the application, or it really depends on each project to project. You get this learning while you deal with the youth state of an application, and then you sit down and try to understand, it looks like this can go into this reducer, looks like this can go into this reducer, etc. Okay, and once you have all the reducers, now the whole point was to have an entire state in a single place. The whole purpose of Redux was to have the entire state of an application in a single place. Now we were trying to create a lot of default reducers, the pieces of default states. Now we need to combine this thing. And that's where we combine using an index.js, and we use a utility function called combine reduces, and we combine everything. Initially, we had a youth state. We broke down that into multiple segments or the fragments using different reduces. Okay, and what we do is we add them back again. The reason we broke it down into this individual default state is because we want to separate. We want to segregate between things. We want to separate the thing so that our reducer will not be very huge. We want to make it modular. And going down the line, if you have any issues with your card, you can directly jump onto the user reducer and try to debug in the user reducer. You don't have to go into the product reducer. No, if you have everything inside a single reducer, that would be really hard for you. You would have hundreds of switch cases. You don't want to really do that, right? No, in my case, I would not have any JavaScript file more than 400 lines of code. That's the max I would go. If something that is going more than that, I'd try to make another utility function. 400 is something very huge. In our application, we do that because it's a very legacy application. We do that. I have seen, I have read a lot of books, and they say it's 150 to 180 is max you can go on every line of code, number of lines of code in the JavaScript. And that really depends what you are doing. If it's a view, you can definitely go how many lines of code you would like. If there is something that's a function or object creation, data model, try to break down, make it modular. The reason we want to make it modular is because we want to break it up and see what's going on. We want to take a look at each unit, and this also helps in unit testing. When you have a huge piece of data, it's hard to do a unit testing. When you want to break it into pieces of units, then it would be easy to run the unit test cases. Okay, once we have all the reducers, we combine the reducers in here. We call it combined reducers. We export the combined reducers. So we're just combining this reducers. We have a piece of data, we are combining it. We want to have someone who can safely keep this data up to date and try to change anything and try to return a new object. And that thing is stored. Now what a store does, it takes all the reducers, all the combined reducers. We call it as root reducer because it has everything in every reducer. All the reducers put together, we call it a root reducer. We import the root reducer, create another store out of the root reducers. Now we have a data, we are putting it into a locker called create store, and that would create a store for us. Now whatever actions we're gonna go or do further, those actions are only performed on the store.
Yeah, clear, Vikram.
Okay, use your panel, folks. Isn't clear?
So Vikram, basically reducer is a function.
It's a pure function.
Oh, okay.
It's a pure function. It would just take the arguments. It would try to manipulate the arguments only. Whatever the arguments you pass, it would only change those arguments and return new arguments. Okay, it really does not do anything with anything outside the scope of the function. You understand the scope, right, guys? I keep using this word. Let me clear this panel up. Guys, you understand the scope in JavaScript? Now I get delayed responses. It's like, can I or shouldn't I? Can I or suppose? Okay, let others answer first. If they answer yes, then I would answer yes. If not, no. Okay. Right, folks? No, Vidisha had a comment on that, but she dropped.
That's correct.
Yeah. Okay. No, I need to figure out some way where I can hide your opinion on the panel, folks. So you don't have this. You don't be influenced by other people's opinion. I should talk to the Zoom team. Okay, so here we are. We have created our reducers. We have created our store. Now this is on the Redux part. Now let's go try to make something on the React tool. Okay, so the first thing we have to do is go to wherever our React is starting. Now, which is the place where the React is kicking off? You guys remember there was one particular location. There was a GPS. There was like a React guru that helps you to find an ID in the document. Who was that fellow?
What's your question, Vikram? An ID?
Who helps the React to initiate, to get onto this index.html file? Okay. The first thing when we started when we kickstarting the React, there were two packages we required. What were the two packages?
package.json? Oh,
Okay.
no, that
Inside the package.json, we have two. Venkat, do you remember what we need to start React?
React and React DOM.
Exactly, React and React DOM. But do you remember a place where the actual project kickstarts?
Basically, it starts from not app like index.js.
Absolutely, yes. This is where the index.js, this is how your application starts, right? Now, this is where you have to integrate Redux into your application. Even before your application starts, it has to start talking to your Redux, okay? And we do it using a package, okay? And this package, now it's a very interesting package. The word by itself is sounds funny to me. Import, and we call it provider. And this package is from React Redux, okay? It's not from Redux anymore, it's from React Redux. Now this fellow, provider, provides the React about the Redux state, okay? And what we do is, we pass a store object into this provider, okay? What I mean by that is, let me import the store first. Import store from store. Now let me console log the store to see everything is working as expected, or did I do anything wrong? This is your entire state of the application. And I would say store dot get state. Okay, let you know what a get state is. Give it a quick run and see if everything was working as expected. Okay, so looks like I have an error. Guys, you need to help me to fix this error. Let me take it go. Divya, can you help me to fix this error?
Should it be before the provider statement?
Every time you do an import, every import is supposed to be on the top of the file. Okay, everything is supposed to be in the initial lines of your code. Anything that is not an import can go after it. Okay, all your imports are supposed to be on the top. Okay, now inspect and console. Okay. Now take a look, folks. This product card is rendering. Product card, where do I have the product card? Let me console log, remove the console log in there. Containers, product container, I have a product in here, and I have a console log in here. Comment out, and comment out. Okay, and give it a refresh. And you can see on my screen, this is your entire state of an application. You see what I'm getting in here? Products and the user. Now, products are in a different location. User was in a different location. I have two different locations. The products were in dynamic products, whereas in product reducer and a user reducer. What is my store doing in here, folks? You can see in my store what I'm doing in here. I'm just importing the store and console logging the store. Okay, I'm just trying to use a function called get state. Store I'm importing, and after the store dot get state. And whenever I say get state, it would get everything that has been created inside the store. And what does the create store do? It would take all the reducers, the root reducer. What is the root reducer? It's a combination of all the reducers. The combination is this guy and this guy. And you can see on my screen, they're all put together, and the products and the reducer. Right from here, the products and the user. Okay. This is how we integrate store into a React. And once we have, let's go back to the index.js, and it takes 3 lines of code to integrate React into Redux. On the app.js part, what we do is we do something like this. We wrap the app inside the provider. Now, provider is something which is part of React Redux. Okay, so provider, comment it out, and provider. Okay. And what we do is we pass an argument or a property store, and this property, the name of the property is store, and the property we are passing is the store as well. So the left side is a property name and the right side is a property value. Okay, and we give it a save. There's nothing that changes on the UI. Okay, this is how we integrate. Before actually the React kit starts, the app.js is where the actual application starts. Before we start it, we wrap it inside a provider, and the provider would in turn take a property which is called a store. Okay, any questions on the provider part? Let's use your panel. Any questions?
Vikram, can you explain once again the provider?
The provider, yes. So until this point, we were only doing on the Redux, right? So we were trying to do the Redux. Now we are done with the Redux. The Redux is up and running. We want to, the whole purpose of the Redux was to create a single state, right? Now we have to inject this state into the Redux application, a React application, right? What we do is we use a utility called provider. Now provider is something we get it from the React Redux. Now this is also a React component. Internally, that's also a React component. What it does is it also takes an argument. It takes a property name, store, and a property value. Now I'm telling it at store in here. I can say a state as well. Apps, people say that as app state. Okay, I can pass this app state as a store. Now this, what a provider does it takes a property called store. Okay, you have to name it store. The property name cannot be changed. Internally, it would read this property name. So it has to be store. And this store will get the app state, the whole entire state of your application. And all you have to do is whichever components you want to pass the state, you have to wrap it inside the provider. Okay, Sandeep? No, it's like that. It's
Yes,
like, yeah, it's something like this, Sandeep. If you have your child and he needs some money, what do is you are your parent. You get the money from the bank and then provide to your child. Now you might get thousands of dollars, but you pass your child only a few hundreds of dollars. You don't have to pass everything, right? But there should be someone who can provide you the money, and that guy is a provider. And there should be someone who can store the money safely, and that is a store, right? And there should be some way we can able to put the money into your account, and that's an account, which is a reducer. Okay. You have your savings account, you have your checkings account, let's say, and the total money you have would be checkings plus your savings. No, you do not have access to this money directly. You cannot go walk into a bank locker and take the money out. There is a facility where you have to go, and there is a procedure. You have to use your ATM card or a PIN or a checkbook or a draft in order to get the money out of the bank. Okay. And that who preserves your money is a store. Though it's your money, somebody is just monitoring it, and you're doing actions. What actions you make? You're debiting, you're crediting, you're swiping your card. All these actions, and this has to be done in a very legitimate way. Okay, so that the store would know that this is who you are making. This is the person who has created the account, and this guy is the one who are making the transactions. Okay, in order to make the transaction, you should be the primary holder. And if your child needs the money, you have to go to the bank, get the money, and pass it to your child. Okay, and you would become the provider because you're standing in between the bank, which is a Redux, and your child.
Okay.
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 Yes, and you know what? We're done with the React Redux integration. But you know what? As I said, you need to pass the money to the child, and this guy app.js supposed to receive this properties. Now we'll take a look. Okay, what I could do is on the products reducers, I would do something different. Okay, product reduces from Redux. Okay, and I would use this term also on the user reducer from Redux. Okay, no, I need to get these properties into my app.js, right, folks? I need to get these properties on my index.js. I'm supposed to get these properties. Now try to give it a look. Time. Okay, give it a right click, inspect, and React. On the store, we have a top level component, which is a store. And now store got three different things. You can see on the store, you got three different things. You got dispatch. There is an interview question. What are the methods on the store? Dispatch, get state, replace reducer, and subscribe. Trust me, 99% of the time you would only use dispatch. In a rare scenario, you would use a get state because you already know what's your state of your application. You do not have to really console and see, because you would only be interested in the state of a particular component. Once your Redux starts talking to your component, you would only interested in the particular component. 99% of the time, you would only use the dispatch. Now, I'll let you know what a dispatch is. Okay, we have on a provider, we have an app.js, and inside an app.js, we have a search bar, and inside the search bar, you have your product container. The product container got all the products in it. Clear until this, folks? Okay, let me clear these things up. Clear until this point? Okay, Murali? Okay, now if I take a look at the app.js, I said my app should get those properties, but take a look. It looks like it's not getting any properties from the React state, right? From the Redux state. We need to do something else. The app looks like it's not getting anything. Okay, so what we do is we go to the app.js, and there is something interesting we do. If you are taking an interview on React Redux, especially on the Redux, this is a must question. Everybody would start asking. Everybody try asking the same question in different ways. Okay, how do you connect your React component to the Redux store? Okay, the way we do this is something like this. We need to connect. Now they use a word called connect. They trying to give out a hint. We use a utility function, and this utility function is it's a self-explanatory utility function. We call it import connect. Where do you think we have to import connect from Redux or React? From React Redux or Redux? Vidisha?
Is it from Redux?
We are connecting.
Actually, React Redux, because we're connecting Redux and React.
Yeah, we are connecting React Redux, right? This is not just the Redux part. This is also React Redux, right? So we use this called utility function called import connect. And this guy is an interesting guy. What he does is, instead of directly exporting the app, he does something very different. What he does is connect it's a function there, and instead of directly exporting, you do something like this. It's a curry function. Are you familiar with curry functions in JavaScript? Use your panel. Are you familiar with curry functions in JavaScript? Okay. There's a lot of JavaScript massaging I have to do for you guys. Okay, otherwise. So I will not go in much more detail into it. A curry function is a function calling another function. Okay, you might probably see this. You would only see this guy. You would only see a single curly brace, right? But if you see another curly brace, and that becomes a curry function. Okay, a function that returns another function. Now, this is something a curry function would look like. This is also a Java. Well, if you are interviewed for a JavaScript position, then this is something people always ask: what is a curry function in JavaScript? So the function would be something like this: function add numbers, and let's say a, and return. Now this does not return a thing, it would return a function. A function returning another function is called a curry function. Now you can see there's something very weird way of doing JavaScript. It's a function, and that function is not just returning a plus b or something like that. It's returning another function which takes an argument. Now I can do something like this: add numbers four, 5. Okay, you see, I'm not passing this as individually. I cannot do something like this. It really helps a modular way of writing JavaScript. Okay, I can try doing different things in here. This is called a curry function because your curry is kind of putting your ingredients together, right? So what we do is this is one ingredient here, there's another ingredient, we put it and make it a curry. That's called a curry function. It's also called nested functions. Okay, so that's a little bit of off topic, but when you try to explain how do you connect your Redux to your React components, the answer would be we use a utility function called connect from React Redux. It's a curry function that takes 2 arguments. Okay, the first argument is map state to props. Okay, I'll tell you what a map state to props does. And we try to export the component. If you do not do export default, it does not really export the component. What we have to do is export default. Do not forget to set on connect. Now this is a curry function. The curry function takes 2 arguments. The first argument is map state to props. No, you really do not have to go by this name. I have seen people go with the name state to props or match state to props, map state to props. I like the way it's called map state to prop. What it does is it gets the React Redux state. It gets the complete Redux state, and this function will be triggered with a state. And let me put in this function. So this function connect default would take 2 arguments: map state to props and an app. App is a component and map state to props is a function, and that function would be triggered. So this is a function in here. So I have to go by the keyword called function. Okay, function. And this function, whenever the Redux runs, this is the first function that's been called in every component. And this function would return something that would become the properties of this component. Now let me console log in here. This is the state from the Redux sending to app.js as props. Okay, now let me throw in a debugger in here and give it a shot. Okay, and my debugger has been stopped in here, and you can see my map state to props is called, and it's called with a particular argument called state, and that state is what my Redux state is. Make sense, folks? And this Redux state, whatever the Redux state we are getting, will be passed as a property to this current React component. So take a look. What I would do is I would return the state the way we get it. You need a thorough understanding of how map state to props works in order to understand how the Redux works. Okay, and let's go take a look at React and the provider and the connect and the app.js. Now look at something happening here, very interesting. It's getting my state, which is actual state of the component, and it's getting few properties, and these properties are given out by the reducers. These are the properties that from the reducers. We're gonna go delete these properties, the states in here. The whole purpose of Redux is to remove the state from the component and add the state into the Redux store, right? So this is how we connect the Redux store to the React component using a utility function called connect. This connect takes map state to props and the actual component. What it really does behind the scenes is it takes this provider, we're telling it provider. Now app.js, we can have any number of components in here. You can have app2, app3, anything like that. We need to have a control of what components are we listening to, right? You have your entire state, but we don't want them forcefully to listen to your state. We want them to have a control. And in order to have the control, we have to go to inside of a component, and we have to explicitly connect to the Redux store. If you do not connect, it doesn't get the data from the Redux store. You have to connect to the Redux store. And in order to connect, you have to use a function, and that function would be called whenever Redux runs. This function would be called with map state to prop with the state argument. No, in my case, I need the entire state for this component. But if I only want to need few pieces of state, what I can do is, instead of returning the whole state, what I can do is return card, and I would have a state, right? The state dot user dot and card from Redux. Okay, now I give it a refresh. Where am I missing a word here? Line number 10, index.js. App state supposed to be app state. Okay, now take a look at the React, connect, and app.js. Now take a look. I'm getting only the cart details from the store. Okay, I'm getting only the cart details from the store. I'm not getting. This is my local cart, which is right in here with my app.js. This is my local cart, local state cart. Okay, I can take this guy out. Okay, no, I don't want to do that because I'm passing the information in here. So this is my local state, and this is my card from reducer, from Redux. Okay. This is my card from Redux. I'm getting this card as a property. I'm not getting this. No, I'm no longer have a state. There are two ways you can pass the data, right? You can have a state, you can have the data inside the component, we call it state. We can pass the data into the component, we call it props. Now I'm taking an advantage of props. We no longer have state because both props and the state, whenever they change, a render function is triggered. And we hijack this concept and we use the Redux to pass the properties into the component. Okay? I would cover the last 30 minutes we have discussed tomorrow as well. How many of you got the thing in here? Are you clear what I discussed for the last 20 minutes?
Vikram, it's clear, but we just need some time to go through it because it's very fast.
Yes, I really understand. This is the case with every student who getting started with Redux. You're not at fault. It's really a very steep learning curve. But this is something you try to integrate on your machine, then maybe you would get a better understanding. If not, I'm here to help you again. In tomorrow's class, I would go over the first 20 minutes. It looks like it's gonna take longer, folks. I cannot promise how long will it take. Probably this week also. So if you have any plans, do let me know. We can skip the classes.
Vikram, could you please upload this code on the GitHub?
You need this code? Yeah, absolutely. I will do that.
Yes, so we can try to figure it out and do it on our own on our machines.
Sure.
And Vikram, do we have classes this weekend as well?
Nope. Who's that? Katie? No, Katie. I will try to cover as much as I can in tomorrow's class. If not, we would have one more. So this is Thursday morning for you, the Friday morning. I would try to cover as much as I can in tomorrow's class. If still doesn't, if we do not progress, then I will take another class on the Monday, and that would be the final class because I have another batch at the same time kicking off on Monday. I would ask them to wait for another day, but if you guys are okay taking a class on the weekend, I'm good with it.
Yes, Vikram.
How many of you are okay taking a class on the weekend?
Vikram, I think Praveen has something, a class in the guest house on the weekends.
Really?
This weekend, yeah. We don't know yet, so I can ask him and let you know.
Sure. If you guys are okay taking the class on the weekend, I would promise you I would not take longer the usual 1 hour session or 1.5 hour session.
Okay.
And we will also have a workshop. It's up to you guys. When do you want to have a workshop where you code and I'll be around?
Okay. Sounds good.
Whenever you have some time. It does not have to be this week, probably in the next week or whenever you feel like we need to catch up and go over everything we discussed, I'm good with it.